Rick Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, we're very pleased to be speaking with Brady Walkinshaw. He's founder and CEO of Noisy Creek, which just acquired the Memphis Flyer, Memphis Magazine. So stay with us for a conversation with Brady. Brady, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be on. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. The Flyer, the magazine, huge institutions in Memphis. I think we've talked before a little bit about my connections to them, but we'll get to that later down the road. But what's next for the Flyer? What's next for the magazine? Those are publications that mean so much to Memphis, and they're curious who you are and where this is going and what's going to happen.
Yeah, it is awesome to be on. I'm really excited to be spending more time in Memphis. So I'm from Washington State originally. I grew up in a small farm town in Washington State, and basically have spent the last 15 or 20 years of my life working on a mix of philanthropy, media, politics, and my entire life I've loved alternative weeklies. I grew up reading alternative weeklies. There's a publication in Seattle, a Pulitzer Prize-winning publication that I own in Seattle called The Stranger, which is an extraordinary publication. It's been around since 1990. And we are really excited to have the Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine join this kind of growing network of alternative papers that we've been investing in and supporting and backing because they're such important community assets. So we're really excited about the future of these papers. We work in Chicago. We also work in Portland and Anchorage, Alaska, a couple other places. And we got to know the team in Memphis about a year ago and started talking. And I got really, really excited about the potential to support local journalism in Memphis.
The alt weeklies, it's interesting. You have bought some of the great ones in the U.S., but like all local news, and I don't mean to be negative. It's just kind of the landscape. It's been really difficult. Alt weeklies, some are gone, that were mainstays of that whole community. I mean, is it as rough a business? And I say that in part, and you and I have spoken before, but the Daily Memphian came out of the kind of, the real decimation of local, full-blown, whatever you want to say, metro newspapers. And there were various attempts to kind of group together some of the alt weeklies around the country. Some worked, some didn't. What's the difference in your model? What do you see in this that other people have not seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what you've built with the Daily Memphian. And I think that you have this pattern around the country, which is basically you have the role that daily papers played historically in American society is you've started to see those daily papers really struggle. And that's for a variety of reasons that you and I could talk about for a long time. But the reality is that you have a real opening in my mind. You have a real opening in communities because I think now more than ever, I think people crave community. They crave real life experiences with one another. We also see a rise in print. We see that people really want to engage with content that they can touch and trust and that they resonate with. And what I have found is two things to be true. One is you have people, I'm in my early 40s, and you have people my age and older, I think, who are nostalgic for this experience that they grew up on. And then I think you have an entirely new generation of people who are Gen Z, who are younger, who are nostalgic for something that they never had in the first place. And I think that is the same kind of experience with these alternative weeklies that help you understand how to go to art and culture and music shows and live venues and know what's going on and get that lefty political slant on something or voicey editorial coverage. I think of alternative weeklies as actually the original digital influencers. Like they were that. They were these like trusted voices in these communities. So I asked about the business model. We're doing something really interesting. I believe in it. I think we can make it work. But we also have a ticketing company. We ticket live events in communities where we work. We do a lot of live event production. We have a podcasting business. We produce Dan Savage, the sex advice columnist, beloved podcast called Savage Love. And we have more podcasts that we've been doing as well. And what we also find is that in this time when things are becoming more digital and there's more AI, that people want original, trusted content. So I'm betting that alternative weeklies actually could have a new era because I think they're more as relevant now as they were ever.
I think all that's true. I mean, I'm in the middle. This is of really tuning out social media. I mean, a certain amount of my job, I have to get on social
Yeah.
sometimes, or, a friend sends you something and you want to see that thing. But just being on social media to be on social media, I've really ended, and I hope to keep it that way. And it's some kind of version of what you're talking about, of just kind of getting rid of some of these this kind of maddening influx of too much information that you don't know what the source is. It kind of tickles you, it kind of intrigues you, and you watch some more. And that idea that you can walk into a coffee shop and see the flyer and pick up this piece of print that doesn't distract you. I mean, you kind of, as long as you turn your phone off, you kind of go through an article, you kind of go through another article, like you can read some things, you can look at the ads. Like, I do have nostalgia for that experience. I mean, and I've always said, I think I've joked with you before, for what now, 8 years almost, we've joked about launching a print edition, and it's on the to-do list that we never get to it. I don't know that we ever will, but I'm glad that the flyer will continue to have print, and the magazine. So
it's kind of to your point. I think, I think about these papers, and you see them in Seattle, for instance. We distribute in 1,100 coffee shops and locations around the city. That we distribute the flyer all over Memphis. And I think of that as being like the real social media. Like, you open this up, you talk to people, you figure out what to do. I mean, when you're stuck in your phone, it's kind of an anti-social media. But I think that idea is of these papers bringing people together and building community is something that I think is really important.
it's also something really nice about when I grew up in print, right? I mean, and was in print forever. When you wrote something in print and it was done, you knew you couldn't change it, couldn't fix it, couldn't add to it. And you knew, and I was in weeklies and magazines and stuff, so you knew also that your advantage was not breaking news relative to local TV or even the daily paper. It was, we can take a beat and have a little perspective, have a take, have some more information, look at it a different way. And that's a nice thing that print allows for, because it's almost a necessity in print, right? I mean, that's really important too. Again, I'll remind everyone we're here with Brady Walkinshaw. He's founder and CEO of Noisy Creek. They just bought the Memphis Flyer, Memphis Magazine. They also own the Chicago Reader, The Stranger in Seattle, Portland Mercury. I probably left one out. I apologize. If I left any out, correct me. But do you have a sort of notion you want to own exactly 6 alt weeklies, or you want to get into 25 markets, or what's that look like for you?
We're also doing work in Alaska and in Montana. And I think that what's really interesting is it's been much more, look, I started this very kind of deeply committed to trying to save these papers in Seattle and Portland, the Seattle one I grew up on, and pretty quickly found that the model was working. And we pretty quickly started to have other papers reaching out to us, asking if they could join this network, because I think people who've been operating these alternative weeklies for a long time really understand the business model. And I think as they start to dive into our model, they start to see how it can work. And I think that's what we've started to see. We also have a lot of philanthropic support as well that we use to help support public interest reporting and journalism in our papers. So that's also an important part of the puzzle. But in terms of where we want to go, I mean, the truth is, I'm actually in Minneapolis right now because we've been thinking about a project here. But we're really open to alternative papers that basically want to join our family and want to be involved in our model. So I don't think it's capped. I think we're kind of growing as we do. We didn't expect to be this big 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah. How do you balance keeping the individual publications local with, you got a vision for them, but all these cities have different identities. The publications are similar, but they're not exactly the same. I mean, that's been, one of the challenges in chains of other types that I've seen, certainly with Metro papers, and then, others, without being ugly, where they got real generic. And it's one thing to have the accounting all happen in one place. There's business is business, and there's some efficiencies, and that is what it is. But Memphis, I've lived in outside Seattle and Portland. I was just in Portland, like all these places, Anchorage I've been to, like they're different, but you've got some commonalities. Like, how do you balance that?
We talk a lot about that a lot internally. I really see all of these publications being locally led, editorially independent, locally driven. We have what we describe as our publisher model, where every paper has a publisher who's really in charge. And that editorial is actually maintained totally editorially independent in local markets. What we have found is a lot of benefits of this network. Like we started this like monthly editors in chief call. So you have the editors of all the papers comparing notes. And the truth is, like, I don't know, we do we might do a funny "I saw you" column in Seattle that you might want to use in Memphis, or you might see a best of series that the Chicago Reader might do really well. That best of series might be something that another paper wants to replicate. We do a very popular sex survey every year. It's a little bit steamy in Seattle. And like some other papers have been like, maybe we can also take that and copy it. So I think there could be like templatized sorts of content that other markets might want to adapt, but all the decision making is local. We do what you describe, which is like you can centralize accounting, or you can centralize your product and tech, but in terms of editorial content, local.
Let me, again, I'll remind everyone we're here with Brady Walkinshaw, he's founder and CEO of Noisy Creek, which just bought the Flyer, Memphis Magazine. We'll be back with him more here, but let me do a little bit of housekeeping and remind everyone. This is The Sidebar, and I am Eric Barnes. The Sidebar is focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. The Sidebar is a podcast, a video podcast, and a radio show. It's a radio share, Natalie. It's a radio show that airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. The Daily Memphian also produces many other podcasts and video podcasts, including our morning podcast, the AMDM, with our editorial director, Mary Casciola, as well as Natalie Van Gundy, who's over here producing all of our shows, and many of the reporters and talents who are with the Daily Memphian. We also have our Memphis Grizzlies podcast featuring Chris Harrington and Drew Hill, and our food podcast, Soundbites, hosted by Holly Whitfield, which also airs as a radio show on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before The Sidebar. I'll also mention we host the podcast version of Behind the Headlines, the TV show we produce and I host over at WKNO every week. Also, Toby Sells from the Memphis Flyer, a frequent contributor and guest on Behind the Headlines. So thank you. Hopefully you won't change that. We need Toby on the show every week. So, or whenever he's on, and Kaylin and Toby. That's correct. We have both of them on the show regularly. All of our video podcasts are on YouTube and the Daily Memphian, and our audio podcasts are on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and the Daily Memphian as well. I should also mention that WYXR shows are archived at WYXR. You can go to WYXR.org or go to the app. And that includes all the shows, talk and music, that WYXR supports every week. We're a partner in WYXR. Full disclosure, I'm a board member. So consider supporting WYXR. It's nonprofit, listener-supported radio. You can become a member or do a one-off donation. And last but not least, if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, do consider becoming one. Paid subscriptions cover about 50% of what we do at the Daily Memphian, advertising, events, another 25%. And then actually we are a 501c3, and donations, foundations, grants, individual donors support the rest of what we do over there. Recently we had Tim Disney, which we'll talk about in a second, because weirdly enough, Brady and I both know Tim. I think that's kind of sort of how we met, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I'll mention that Tim, who is a friend, and we did an interview with him last week. He's going to be at Novel this week. That's August 29th, Saturday, 6 p.m. And actually, because I'm going to be out of town, Toby Sells is going to be doing the Q&A and walk through with Tim and his graphic novel. It'll be great. We talked about it. It was a really great interview, and I'm sure that event at Novel will be great. We also had Pat Mitchell-Worley on the show recently from Stax, Soulsville Foundation. And then I mentioned Behind the Headlines. We've got coming up soon, in no particular order because I didn't write it down in the right order, Justin Pearson, who is running against Brent Taylor for the U.S. House District 9. We had Brent Taylor on the show last week. We also have Chaz Mulder he is the U.S. District 5, one of the now 3 districts that subdivide Memphis. He's the Democrat. We're also working to get his opponent, the Republican Charlie Hatcher, on the show. We had Jerry Green, the Democratic candidate for governor, on the show, reached out to Marsha Blackburn. And then we're also trying to get Heidi Kuhn and David Kustoff for District 8 and get them on the show very soon. You can go to WKNO.org or the Daily Memphian as those shows and profiles. We're doing them one by one just to get the full 26 minutes, which is even then not enough, to profile each of these candidates. We hope to get to all of them before Election Day in November. But we are here with Brady Walkinshaw from Noisy Creek, now the owner of the Memphis Flyer and Memphis Magazine. I was thinking about this. Maybe when we met, and I think Tim connected us because you were doing some work in Memphis. Tim's son and my daughter have been living together now forever, and they're great. His son is great. I've got a chance to meet his other son and all that, in a really good way. I can't remember when we talked because you were just sort of feeling out Memphis, and we were chatting by Zoom. The first freelance work, the first journalism I ever did in Memphis when I moved here 31 years ago was for the Memphis Flyer.
Funny. What was this? What was it?
It was Baptist Hospital, which is one of the big hospital groups here, had proposed a hospital out in Collierville in the suburbs. And they ultimately they built it, but there was a lot of pushback. The suburbs wanted a hospital, but they didn't like, it was classic NIMBYism, right? Like, we want a hospital, we just don't want it right there. And nobody in Collierville wanted it next to them because they're bright and they noise and they're sirens. And it was a kind of NIMBY story about what's going to happen with that. I think I wrote a couple others for the Flyer as a freelancer. And then I went to work for Bob Towery, and Bob Towery founded Memphis Magazine. And then before he was bought out by the other folks, he was part of launching the Memphis Flyer as well, and is still. So I worked for Towery Publishing for him, did business guides and city directories and city books around the country for him. And Bob is still a good friend and one of the sort of godfathers of local Memphis publishing. But anyway, lots of connections, and lots of folks here, I think, as we talked about, who were at the Flyer, contemporary media at various times over the years. So there's a lot of love for the group in this building. I'm going to actually get to my actual questions, and we're halfway through here. So let's talk about ticketing. How does that work in an age of Ticketmaster and StubHub and all the other ticket services? But you have a ticketing service that is tied to the various publications, right?
That's right. So, I mean, at their best, I think what's so exciting about these alternative papers is that they've been exceptional in covering arts and culture and performance and music and visual arts and performing arts. And I think that part of what drew me to these publications early on, and that connection to covering arts and culture is also a great way for us, at least, to kind of also support venues. And we have a ticketing platform that we launched over a decade ago. It was very bootstrapped, over a decade ago in Seattle. And we support a few hundred venues with their ticketing. So we ticket a lot of festivals and comedy clubs and small theaters and small performing arts venues. And that has been a way that we've started to find a diverse and creative way to help support local journalism and make a business, which is a very hard business, to make it work, to find a business model that can actually support local news to grow and provide good jobs for journalists and all that stuff, which is so critical to American democracy. But for us, we've kind of created this ticketing platform as a way of helping support local news. So that's something we hope, I would say, next year to launch in Memphis. And that'll be working hopefully with small venues who want to partner with us. And one of our angles has been that if you ticket with us, then we also give you part of those fees. We give them back to you as free advertising in the paper. Okay. And that's something we're hoping to do in Memphis down the road as we launch our ticketing in 2027. Will be to also make that a service to folks who want to have access to free advertising. And
you have a listing kind of platform as well, like event listings. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we also have something called everout.com, and that is an events guide. So we have that now. We just launched it in Chicago. It's in Chicago, Portland, and Seattle. We're launching it more places. And that's basically like 52 things to do in Memphis this weekend, or 7 best summer cocktails, or, best runs, or that kind of content that helps showcase and spotlight local venues and things to do in your community. And that events calendar is something that we also connect to our ticketing. So we're excited to bring that to Memphis.
You mentioned earlier the national, obviously Dan Savage is a national, if not international podcast, and others. Do you do local podcasts as well?
We just, it's a great question. We just launched our first one in Seattle, which we would love to kind of explore other places. And it's called Noise Complaint. And it's basically been having a local band come into, kind of a local undiscovered band come into our office every week and perform a set.
Oh, wow.
It's like a 20-minute set. We just had there's this very famous high school in Seattle called Garfield High School.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a well-known public high school. It had a long history of jazz. And some very famous jazz performers came through that. And they have a very famous high school jazz band. So we just had the high school jazz band in performing at our office. And then we streamed that. So yeah. We're thinking about other podcasts like that. I think we've been thinking about a weekly interview-based show. We've been thinking about other kind of local podcasts that we might do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Because obviously, and do you do them as video too, or is that just audio?
And video too, which is exactly kind of what you're doing. Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
it's been great. It's so far the reception of this music one has been great. And
Yeah.
Dan's podcast, we also video, we also
Right.
screen, we also video that.
Yeah, we just this is probably our 8th version of this weekly podcast that's video, something like that, 6, 7, 8. I don't know how many it's been. I've lost track of time, but everyone wants a video podcast. I mean, it's not kind of how I consume it, but it's one of those things where you look at the numbers and you're like, well, yeah, we got to get into video. I mean, this is cooked. We're done. We're going to be doing all these as video. So, your background is funny. I was just looking at your LinkedIn. You started Grist, right? Right. So
I liked Grist for a long time.
Yes. Yeah. Talk about Grist, and then we'll get to the funnier parts. The Grist makes sense in the context of this conversation. Other parts, you're like, oh wow. But talk about Grist and what.
Yeah, I spent several years leading and building a national nonprofit media organization called Grist, which reports around the United States on issues of environment and climate change. And I spent several years building that. I'm still on the board of it. It's a really wonderful media outlet that covers all sorts of things connected to the future of the planet.
Okay. When it's 199 degrees in Memphis, that actually seems ever more relevant. And when Europe is burning and all the things are happening. So, and then you were in the House of Representatives for the state of Washington, a state legislator.
I was. So I started my career working at the Bill and Melinda, what it was then called the Bill and Melinda, the Gates Foundation in Seattle. Yeah. After school, I moved back to Seattle, and then I was appointed to public office. I served in our state house for 4 years. Was appointed back in 2013, and then I lost a race for Congress in 2016, and I was like, politics isn't for me, and I it just wasn't for me. And some people, as you know, it sounded like you're interviewing a lot of politicians. Some people leave politics with an eye to always wanting to go back,
right? And
I left being like, no, not for me. I really believe in the power of culture. I really believe in the importance of local media, and that. For me, I kind of took this pivot toward entertainment and culture after leaving politics a decade ago.
The people I know, I mean, so I referenced Behind the Headlines, which is a show we do with our PBS affiliate, and I've hosted this. We're in our 17th season now. So state legislators, governors, senators, mayors, and lots of other folks too as well, which is fun to mix it up. And I used to spend a lot of time at the Capitol in Nashville when I was very involved with the Tennessee Press Association. I'm still on the board, but I was very, very involved for some years. And I remember a very prominent legislator, I don't think I can say who it was, but he said, this place being up here is a drug. And for some people, once you get hooked on that drug, you will never let it go. And it was, in a not pleasant way, a lot of people who loved being there. Almost in some ways more than they liked being in their home districts. And it was a very strange environment where and I also remember about that, and I don't know if the Washington State Legislature was the same, but I remember I'd be up there looking, as part of the Press Association to lobby for things like, sunshine laws and public records and all that kind of stuff. And you'd be sitting in the, waiting in a hearing room, and they'd be going through committee, and they'd be rolling through these bills and just passing them.
Yes.
And I remember kind of like tuning into them because our bill wasn't up yet. And it was something on the one end that sounds like nothing, but it was about how sidewalks and, crosswalks and stop signs would all interact across the state. And they talked about it for 90 seconds and passed it forward. And I was like, that actually is going to happen. And I didn't even know if it was good or bad. I'm better, I don't know, but they would move through these things so quickly with so little discussion. It was a little it's a little depressing, because you're like, these are really important things about how people live in their neighborhoods, and you spent 90 seconds on it. You know what I mean? But I also am understanding of they're at least in the Tennessee legislature, they're not screwing around. I mean, they are working all day and all night it's about a 4-month session here. They're in session a lot. And they're just trying to do more than they really can do in 4 months with part-time jobs. But I don't know what your experience was like on that side.
I just think, and I think it goes, the Daily Memphian does a lot of great coverage here, but I think that this coverage of state houses and state legislatures is so important. And you've seen such a reduction in journalism covering state legislatures. And I think it's such an important level of government to have really great reporting and accountability and coverage around, because the decisions that are made there affect folks so much. And oftentimes, city and municipal government is more in the public view, or even federal government. But I think the state can be this like kind of missing spot in terms of our editorial and journalism. But it just to what you said, it matters so much.
Yeah.
So it was a great education for me to be there, but it truly wasn't it was not my life calling. I think I found that in media.
Was it, we're way in the weeds, but was it like 4 months, 6 months? Was it year round?
Oh, our legislature in Washington State, we passed a biennial budget, right? So they passed a budget every other year.
Yeah.
So you'd have one session that was 105 days and another session that was 60 days. And I stayed involved with political stuff after. I was very involved with our redistricting in Washington State in the last redistricting cycle. So I've continued to be kind of around aspects of it, but I definitely have come to feel that trying to fix this problem of how do we create a strong, vibrant local press, and that could be the kind of work you're doing, could be these free alternative distribution weeklies, Memphis Magazine. That's so critical, I think, to kind of shaping how government works for us. That we just need it really badly. And I came to think that this kind of solving this problem of local news and arts and culture is just really critical to American democracy.
And you mentioned at the top, we could talk for another half an hour, we won't, but AI in this. And there's all the kinds of great things with AI. I'm not somebody who's just totally putting my hand, we on the programming and tech side and data, just doing data analysis of how people experience the sites and taking public records and trying to go through. But then the idea that, I do think there is this place for local news in the world of AI. You can ask AI, who was, President fill in the blank, right? And they've got 1,000 sources about Donald Trump, President Obama, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In Memphis, AI doesn't have a lot of sourcing. If you ask about the mayor or you ask about the city council, and I think and I don't think they're really going to get a lot of sourcing over time. It's just not, why would they spend that? There's so much money to be made in other areas, in communities and towns. And so I do feel like in this world where AI overwhelms people, social media overwhelms people, there's a lot of distrust of those entities, let alone the data centers, all the different politics of it. I feel like local news, when it's truly written by humans, researched by humans, and has a real connection to the people in the city, I do think it's ever more important. And I've been saying it's been important for a long, long time as all the other places were collapsing. So that's my
I agree with you. I could not agree with you more. I think the currency of the future is really built on trust, and especially where are you finding that trust? What is that trust turning into for a business? How does that trust translate into journalism and editorial coverage? And I believe that the future will actually be, I think it's probably going to be more analog than we think, or more analog than certainly the market's predicting. And I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities in kind of creating storytelling that is genuinely local, that, as you were just saying, like, there isn't a lot of information coming out of a place like Memphis to kind of supply what these large language models are saying, right? So it makes local news even more important, because it's not the sort of thing that AI can so immediately replace.
Yeah. We're pretty much out of time. I always try to ask people, though, and this will be good with you, what was the first concert you went to?
Oh, God. The first concert I went to, as a kid, my parents were hippies. My dad farmed organic vegetables growing up. My mom was a school teacher, and I grew up in this little farm town, and right up on the Canadian border, like right across the border from Vancouver in northern Washington State.
What town?
It's this little, it's called Whatcom County, but a town called Everson, Washington. Okay. It's a small town up in Whatcom County up there. Yeah. And we used to go every summer to the Vancouver Folk Festival, where you would sit and listen to folk music. Yeah.
Nice.
That was probably the first live concert.
What was the first live concert where you, if you remember, where you spent your own money, where you bought your own ticket?
Oh, I think the answer to that is, I remember in college, I saw Presidents of the United States of America.
Nice.
Probably circa like 2003.
Nice.
After they were already on their way down by that point. But
that's all right. Sometimes that's a good one. Brady Walkinshaw, thanks so much for doing this. I hope to see you in Memphis sometime, and congratulations on buying the flyer in the magazine. And it's a great thing for Memphis that you all are gonna keep it going. So that's a fantastic thing. So thanks so much for joining us. And you can
Thanks for your time, Eric.
That is all the time we have this week. If you missed any of the episode, go to wkno.org. You can see. I wish you could see Natalie laughing at me. I'm actually a media professional, Brady. You wouldn't believe that.
I believe it.
You can get the audio at iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. But thanks very much, and we'll see you.